above of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because it is pleasant to repeat what seems each time I tell it more wonderfully sweet. I love to tell the story, for some have never heard the message of salvation from God's own holy word. I love to tell the I love to tell the story for those who know it best. Seems hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story that I have loved so long. I'd love to tell the story that'll be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Thank you. You may be seated. This song kind of goes along with that, telling the story. I don't know, I know this is a dumb question, but how many people have had life experiences where you had questions but you had no answers? You know, you just wonder, okay, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I handle this? How am I going to make it this next mile? Well, there is an answer, and I'm going to sing about it right now. So y'all just listen, and I'll do my best. I guess I better get a mic. Sorry. Some men try so hard to prove that God's not really real, while others say they know for sure his love you cannot feel. But I know he's real within my soul, for one day he cleansed and made me whole. And Jesus is still the answer for that longing deep in your soul. Jesus is still the answer, though time and ages roll. Jesus is still the answer. He's the answer for your soul. And though some may say he doesn't fit with their philosophy. I know Jesus is still the answer. He's always been and always will be. Some men pretend that things of this world have brought them peace of mind. But with the dawn of each new day, new thrills they try to find. Not until they meet the Prince of Peace can they ever hope to find relief. For Jesus is still the answer for a world that's seeking for peace. Jesus is still the answer, and though time and ages roll, Jesus is still the answer. He's the answer for your soul. And though some may say he doesn't fit with their philosophy, I know Jesus is still the answer. He's always been and always will be. And though some may say he doesn't fit with their philosophy, I know Jesus is still the answer. He's always been and always will be. Amen. Amen. Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Brother Shane Arnold now, and he's going to come and minister to us.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for the singing, and thank you for the warm welcome, and just great honor to be here. And I'm going to ask you to turn your Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 21. I think this is my second time getting to be here with you. It's been a while, though. Pastor Eric and I went to seminary together, which is, it's funny because he grew up in Sweetwater, I grew up in Athens. We met in Raleigh. So we had all those years didn't meet each other. And the reason we met is the place where my wife worked was giving away a desk, but I didn't have a truck. And God had given Eric the spiritual gift of a truck, and we met because somebody said, hey, I know a guy across the road that's got a truck, and I called him, and we went and got the desk and have been friends ever since. And you guys are really fortunate to have Eric and his family among you. Let me take a look here at 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we're going to start reading in verse 10. And David rose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. Now, just note that, okay? Something has gone bad wrong already. But just note that. We'll come back to it. And the servants of Achish said to him, is not this David, king of the land? Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, but David his 10,000s. And David took those words to heart and was much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them and pretended to be insane in their hands and make marks on the doors of the gate and let his spittle run down his beard. And Achish said to his servants, behold, you see this man is mad. This guy is insane. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought me this fellow to behave as a madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him, and he became captain over them. And there were with him about 400 men. Would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I pray this morning that your Spirit would guide. I pray that you would convict us, that you would challenge us, that you would encourage us, that you would restore us, that you would prepare us for wherever you send us. We thank you for the evidence of your working in this place already, the needs that this church is already meeting, and the challenges that they've laid out before them, and the willingness to partner together on the missionary task through the Lottie Moon offering and supporting the work. I pray that you will meet with us this morning. We want to see you. We want to love you more. And we want to offer to others what you've offered us. And so I pray that you be magnified. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. For the last 11 years, I've been part of a leadership team that works in a Christian school in Athens. And I'm telling you what, it's more fun than ought to be legal, but it also comes with its challenges. Because when you put together two things that mean a lot to people, namely their kids and their money, when those come together in one place, you get to see some stuff. You know, and so I'll have meetings with parents every now and then, and there's one phrase that comes up over and over. I mean, somebody might got a C on a test, and they want to come meet with me. I can't believe he got a C in this test. I'm like, well, he left 10 questions blank. You know, or you know, somebody will get in trouble or something, and we have to disciple and discipline and all those kind of things, and we'll talk about them. And one thing that comes up over and over again is when something doesn't go the parent's way, they'll more times than not say, I thought this was a Christian school. Yeah. Okay. And it depends on how I'm feeling that day. And it depends on the situation and what, you know, the sensitivity of the situation or all those kind of things. And sometimes if I'm feeling a little snarky, I might say, well, has Jesus actually ever told you no before? Because he does, you know. Or sometimes I'll just say, so you're telling me that the church you go to's never had any problems? Everything's always gone like you think it ought to go. And more times than not, when I say something like that, they may pause for a minute, rock back in their chair, and I can't even believe the stories that I've heard from time to time. Stories of just immense disappointment. Stories of immense pain. Stories of church hurt. Being hurt by the people of God. And that kind of hurt hurts worse. Because in so many ways we never see it coming. So many ways we think this ought to be a safe place for some of those things. In so many ways, that hurts worse, and it sticks with us, and it's hard to deal with, and it's hard to overcome. And so I want to talk to you this morning about something I hope that doesn't apply to anybody in here. I hope this message is for you to help somebody else later. I hope this doesn't apply to you at all, because if it does, it means you know what it's like to get your heart broke by the people of God. And those times are ripe opportunities for Satan to pull you away from the very God that you need. David, at this point in the Scriptures, has lived a life already. The people of Israel wanted a king like everybody else. And they demand, God, give us a king like everybody else. And the prophet Samuel tried to dissuade them from wanting a king like everybody else. He tried to discourage them. And God comes to Samuel and he says, don't try to change their mind, Samuel. They've not rejected you. They've rejected me. And so they go. God sends them a king. And this king looks like a king. He's tall. He's strong. He's commanding. But he's also cowardly, and he's harsh, and he's cruel. And King Saul he looks the part, but he's a disappointment in the role. And so God rejects him, and he tells Samuel, I'm going to send you to anoint somebody else to be king over my people. And so he goes to the house of Jesse. And he says, take Jesse's sons and look at the sons, and I'm going to tell you who the next king will be so that you can anoint him. And so he takes the first son by him, and he looks the part, and Samuel thinks he has his guy, and lo and behold says, that's not the guy. As a matter of fact, all of the sons of Jesse become parading through him, and they're all rejected. And Samuel says, Jesse, now only if he was from the East Tennessee-ish part would he say, ain't you got nothing? And he said, well, yeah, we do got this one, but he keeps the sheep. Samuel said, we're not going to do anything else till you go get him. And so they go get him, and he's ruddy, he's red, and he's handsome. And he's been out in the field with the sheep, and God says, that's the guy. And he is anointed king, but he's anointed king in the context of a family that has him as an afterthought. When it comes to parade his sons before a visitor, they don't even think to go get him because he's the shepherd boy. And I just wonder, like I said, I hope this doesn't apply to you, but I just wonder, do you know anybody that's come from a family that doesn't believe in them at all? Where there's an afterthought. Don't think he could be anything. A battle rages, Philistines. Jesse sends David to go check on his brothers who are at war. Well, not really at war. They're kind of looking at the possibility of war as they're positioned across from the enemy. And the enemy, the Philistines, send out this giant named Goliath, who comes out and mocks the Lord and threatens them every day. And he says, let's settle it this way, says Goliath. I'm going to go out. You send your champion against me, and whoever wins the battle can be the winners. Any takers? And there are no takers, including the big, strong king that they wanted. Well, David shows up to go check on his brothers and see what's happening. And when he hears Goliath speak and he sees what's going on, what is going on here? Who is this guy out mocking the Lord and challenging God's people, and we're just sitting here doing nothing? And immediately his older brother gets really, really mad. David, I know you're conceited. I know what you're thinking. You just came here to be nosy. Won't you just take yourself back to them little old sheep you're used to playing with? That's the kind of sibling relationship that exists. Well, you know the story. David takes the challenge and he goes out against Goliath. And this day is a battle for the Lord. This day I'm going to remove your head and feed your body to the birds and all this kind of things. And he takes 5 stones, he gets one and rockets that thing right in the head. Defeats Goliath, and the people start singing about David being a champion. David has slain his 10,000 and Saul has slain his thousands. Well, an evil spirit from the Lord comes upon Saul. And music seems to be the only thing that can settle him down. And so they look for someone who could play music. And lo and behold, David can play and sing and write music. And so he's removed from his father's house to go be the guy who soothes the king. While he's there, he meets a guy named Jonathan who becomes his best friend. You ever had a best friend? You ever have somebody that just kind of finish your sentences? Somebody, if you were playing ball with, if you play ball, you know they're going to go left when they're supposed to go left. Somebody that you can be yourself around. Somebody that you can unburden your heart to. Somebody that you can laugh with. Somebody that you can celebrate with. You know, the best friends of the world are not just those that are there in the hard times, but they're there that can be there in the good times because they're not jealous. They can celebrate with you. And David's got one of those friends. He ends up getting a wife too. Becomes a king's son-in-law. So he got a good job. He's got a best friend. He's got a wife. And slowly but surely, he's got a really jealous king. And one day he's playing his music for the king. And the king goes into a fit of rage. And he just gets into such a fit of rage that he picks up a spear and throws it at him. And David's able to get out of the way, but the spear sticks in the wall. And it's not too long after that that David becomes a man on the run. Which means he's got to leave his job, he's got to leave his wife, and just breaks his heart. He's got to leave his best friend. And it all happens because the king is jealous. All David has done is win a victory and use his gifts to try to calm the insanity of the king. And once he leaves, the king goes after him. And for the next period of time in David's life, wherever he goes, Saul is after him. Whatever he says, it's like Saul is listening. Wherever he stays for a little while, if Saul finds out, he's chasing him. And so David is just a man on the run, having left everything that he loves because someone who's supposed to be the man of God's not acting like it. And you can lose a lot of stuff. My granddad. Well, my grandmother too. As they got older in life, they lived in this just really, really state of fear that one day they were going to have to go to the nursing home. Now, nursing homes are there and do a good work. But my grandparents were afraid to go to nursing homes for one reason. Somebody's going to bathe me, somebody's going to change me, somebody's going to have to feed me, somebody's going to do all those kind of things, that I'm afraid I'll lose my dignity. I may lose my money, I may lose my health, I may lose my house, I may lose all those kind of things, but when I lose my dignity, I don't know that I can take it. And here in 1 Samuel chapter 21, David loses his dignity. David rose and fled from Saul. He's always running from Saul. He's always fleeing from Saul. And he goes to Achish, the king of Gath. You know why that's a problem? Because that's Goliath's hometown. That's where he's fallen. And he gets there, and the people are afraid of him. Like, isn't this the next king? Isn't this the guy they sing about? Look, you can't leave him here. You got to get him out of here. And David becomes afraid, like they might kill me now. And so he has to go into action, and his action is pretend to be insane. So he's ranting and raving, he's making marks on the door, and he lets spit run down his beard. He's just laying there like a madman. Let me tell you, that's a long way from the throne. Wallowing in the dirt and let spit trickle down your face. And you know what? Even Goliath's people won't take him. Nobody wants him. They know where to go. And so it says in chapter 22, verse 1, he left from there and escaped to a cave. A damp, dark, lonely place. Now, you ever been in a place like that? Not just a cave physically, but you ever been to a damp, dark, lonely place? When I was in my early 20s, our church had just had an amazing time. Just a few years, it was like revival. You know, our people just kept coming. We were seeing people come to know the Lord. We were seeing just all kinds of wonderful things happen. And they had let me be, back in the day, they used to call it Sunday school director or Sunday school superintendent. It's the guy that ordered the books and made announcements on Sunday morning. They let me do some things like that. And it was just a joy, just a thrill to be a part of it. And one Sunday I had taken a trip and I was out. And we had about a couple hundred people in Sunday school, and that was like record breaking for us. We usually had like 100, 130, and it had built up to that. And so I came back from this trip, and on Monday afternoon, I got a phone call from one of the just sweetest old ladies in our church. Had picked up the phone and she called me and she said, I've been teaching this Sunday school class for 25 years, but I tell you what, if so-and-so is going to remain in this class, I won't ever teach it again. Just hung up. And pretty soon somebody else called and said, I tell you what, I've been a member of this class 30-something years, and I will not listen to that woman teach again. I'm going to start a new one. You don't let me start a new one, I won't never be back. I didn't know what in the world had happened. Went all week like that. And got to church on Sunday morning. We had gone from 200 and something to Sunday school to 80. And so this tells you something about the slowness of my brain. It took me till after a week to say, something happened last week while I was gone. Yeah. On Saturday afternoon, there's a guy in the church. Right down the road from our church, they had built a volunteer fire department, and he was out working on the volunteer fire department, and he fell off a scaffold. And he had arthritis really bad in his feet. As a matter of fact, his toes were just wadded up on top of each other just like that. I went to see him in the hospital one time. They just one of them like that. And so he fell off a scaffold and landed on his heels, and he crushed both of his heels. So he was going to have to be out of work for a while because he couldn't walk. And so the preacher and the chairman of the deacons got up on Sunday morning and said, hey, now, brother so-and-so, he fell off a scaffold working on the volunteer fire department up here, and he's going to be out of work. We don't know anything, but we would just like to show that we appreciate it. We're just going to take a love offering for him that may help him in this time. And just going to ask if got a couple guys there in the back, and you just go back there, and if you want to help them out, just do it. If you don't, that's fine. And the service is over. And would you believe that love offering became the dynamite that blew up a community? Because half the congregation thought, that's breaking protocol there. That didn't go before a business meeting. And what happened was there was a family that didn't like the family whose guy broke his feet. And the guy who broke his feet, their family didn't like these other families. And I'm telling you, as a 20-year-old man, I can't remember exactly how old I was, there was a civil war for 2 years. People would bring, now those of you that are young in the crowd, you don't know this, but we used to have phones that didn't travel with us. Like they were in the house only. Now, when you got really fancy, you could get these phones that had this ginormous cord. Not cord. They all had a cord. It had this big old antenna you could walk around the house with. You had to be careful not to go around the wrong corner. It could hang up on you. But they used to have these things called answering machines. It's where we captured voicemail. And there would be people that would play answering machine tapes that somebody would call and cuss them out until the tape was over. My father's unchurched to this day. He's been my whole life. He still is now. And he came home every day. I remember he came home at 5 o'clock. I don't know how he did it, but he left the same time. He came home the same time every day. And there was one afternoon at about 4:30, there was this guy who was about 6'4", and I would say now he was probably about 340 pounds. He looked like he was about 782 pounds back then. But he came and right there in my front yard, got right down in my face, pointing his finger right there at my nose, screaming and yelling and telling me, hey, you're the Sunday school director. You're the last church officer that's not signed on to get this preacher fired. All we need is your signature. You do it now. Now, the corner of my eye, I saw the old work truck coming down the road. My daddy pulled down the driveway. The guy got up, turned around. As soon as my daddy came to the car, he shook his hand and said, oh, Mr. Arnold, just we would so love to come see you at church. I just want to come invite you. That's not why he came. He came threatening his son in his front yard. My daddy just winked at me like, that's why I don't go, son. These people had been my Sunday school teachers. These people had been folks that I looked up to. You know what that is? For a young man, that's a cave. For an older man, that's a cave. For a person who's had their heart broke and disappointed in church, that is a cave. And the great tragedy of this part of Southeast Tennessee is there are hundreds of those people at home right now. Because their moment in the cave became their time of walking away. But there's something that can happen in that cave. Psalm 142 is a psalm that David wrote about this moment. And it's in that moment in a cave where sometimes God has to get us all alone to make us see what we've really been leaning on and what we've really become like and where we've really put our faith and what we really want to be about. You know, in some of those moments, I wish that had been the only moment. There's been more. And in some of those moments, I hadn't liked those cave moments because when I'm alone with God, there's some things I can't blame other people about. You know, there's people in that situation, they shouldn't have made those phone calls. That guy shouldn't have come to my house like that. You know what? There's things I shouldn't have done either. There was things I shouldn't have said. There was attitudes that I wasn't a victim. And sometimes it takes a cave for God to begin to work in you. And that shouldn't surprise us. It shouldn't surprise us that what the enemy of our soul means for evil, that God means for good. Because ultimately, you and I are not people of a cave. We are people of a cross. We are people whose captain, whose author, whose perfecter of our faith went to a cross wrongly accused, who was slain wrongly, who was laid into a tomb wrongly. But what Satan meant for evil, God meant for your deliverance and for mine. That tomb is empty. And in the cave, we begin to know that Christmas, when it says He is Emmanuel, God with us, it means He's especially with us when it seems like nobody else is. But there's something else that happened too. Did you notice who the first people were to show up? When his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went to him. They went to him because sometimes it takes something like that for real healing to begin. Now, I don't know. We'll ask them one day. Did they talk about, remember that time Samuel came? Remember that time of battle? Hey, life can't be good for his family. If he's a wanted man, where do you think they're going to start looking? But it's there in the cave where some of the healing that needed to take place could begin. But it couldn't begin if they didn't go to each other. But there was something else. If you're putting together your army, who do you pick? In the days of college sports and NIL, people put up good money to get people on their team. Now look at this team. Look at this team. And everybody who's tore up. Everybody who's in distress. And everybody who is dead, broken, in debt. And then everybody who's embittered in soul. Said, let's go gather there. There's the next king. His family's come to him. And then a whole lot of broken people come to him. And you look at that broken people and you say, can they ever be anything other than cave dwellers? Can they ever do anything more than sulk and lick their wounds? Can they ever become anything? And God seems to specialize in taking troubled, broken people and making them into an army of righteousness. Do you know that David's mighty men of battle came from the cave? Sometimes you have to get your heart broken so you know how to handle other people's broken hearts. What Satan meant for evil in the life of David, God meant it for good. Satan was trying to tear down David. God was building a king. Satan was trying to destroy a family. God was putting together a dynasty. Satan was trying to run him out. God was raising up an army. You and I, as the people of God, have to understand, even in those moments, maybe especially in those moments when we are disappointed, when we are hurt, when we are wounded by the people of God, that should not pull us away from God. As a matter of fact, it may be the very seedbed where oaks of righteousness begin to grow. But they won't grow if we don't take the hard steps of obedience. Now, when Eric called me and asked me to come, like, this is my favorite Sunday of the year, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And it's not my favorite Sunday so I can just work off a little energy and eat more. It's my favorite Sunday of the year because when I was about to finish seminary, my greatest dream was to pastor a church and try to help what happened to me not happen to anybody else. Yeah. And I was very, very successful at that for exactly a month and a half. I should have known I was in trouble when I pulled up into the parking lot, and it's a church of 30 people, and there's a reserve for pastor, reserve for associate pastor. Yeah. And I should have known I was in trouble when the first hospital visit that I met, the people said, "Hey, my name is so-and-so. Thank you for coming. I'm one of Rick's." I don't know what that means. And until I asked somebody, so, I went and saw so-and-so, and they told me they were one of Rick's. And I said, that's what they'd say. I'm one of Bill's. Come to find out, the pastor got sick, so they hired an associate pastor while he was sick. And then when they were all back together, come to find out these two guys hated each other, and their families hated each other. So Bill's people sat on one side and Rick's people sat on the other. And for a month and a half, I did a good job of bringing them back together. And then after a month and a half, I really brought them together because they couldn't agree on absolutely anything except none of us like him. And it's hard to believe, right? Given this, I'm so glad. God bless them. Every sermon from those first years are on cassette tape, and nobody has cassette tape players, and I hope they're all destroyed somewhere. There's one lady whose heart and life had really been changed by the pastor that was there before me. So she had a really hard time with anybody new coming in. She had a really hard time with a young, pompous, know-it-all seminarian coming in. And she made life pretty tough. Every time I went out of town, she organized a prayer meeting. Anyway, let's get everybody together, and can we agree on how bad he's doing? Let's start over. Yeah. And God bless Chairman Deacons. God bless him no matter where I was. He called me up, "Hey, preacher, how you doing?" Like, "I'm doing okay." "Well, you won't be when I finish talking to you, because last night they had nothing. And we were having a revival, and one of my mentors, one of the good friends, he's from Athens, lives in Jonesboro, Tennessee now, was preaching this revival. And her mom had passed away a few months ago, and her dad unexpectedly, at Friday afternoon at work, he got sick, and he was in the hospital. And my friend that was there said, "Hey, don't you think you ought to go see him?" I'm like, "No, I don't. She's holding meetings about me. I'll tell you what, then go get him to go. Get the retired preacher to go." No. Isn't that something to say that out loud? I was supposed to say, "No, I will go." I ain't going. And he used to be my basketball coach. He said, "I'll tell you what, you're going to get in that car and drive, or I'm going to put you in it." And we went to the hospital. And we got there at the exact moment where the doctor said there's no hope. He may be a day at best. And I don't know about any of you, but there's something about when I see a guy cry, it really doesn't matter what the occasion is. I cry. I don't know why. I'm a sympathetic crier for other guys. I don't know why, And she's got a brother that's like a professional wailer. You could hire him out for funerals to make sure if I die, hire him because they'll know I missed. Because, this guy could cry, And they had just told him that his dad's going to die. He walks out in the hallway. He collapses in the floor sobbing. And I'm sitting there kind of, wiping her. And she happened to see a tear fall. And thought, maybe he's not as bad as I thought he was. Like, yeah, I'm totally as bad as you thought I was. I just can't stand to see him crying. I thought she began to soften a little bit, but I wasn't sure. And on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, that Sunday night service, we always had a candlelight Lord's Supper. And for some reason that night, before we observed the Lord's Supper, this is a family moment. Anybody got anything they'd like to share? And she stood up, and I went, "Why did you do that, rookie? Why?" And she said, "I need somebody to go in the back and get the preacher's wife." And "Oh, no, oh no, what have I done? You know, all those kind of things. And somebody did it. She was in the nursery and they went and got her and they put her on stage, and me and her are sitting out there like, well, it's a good thing we're going home. We just take our luggage because we're about to get fired. And she stood up, she took a microphone and she looked at the crowd and she said, every one of you know how awful I've been to these two people. And I'm going to tell every single one of you, they don't deserve it. They didn't deserve it. I've been wrong, and I've been wrong publicly. And I want to ask these two publicly to forgive me. Now, that puts me in a weird spot, right? Because I can either say, you sure have. Tell them what you've done. Now, I may be the only one in there that struggled at that moment with that. Yeah, tell them. Or I could say, yeah, it's all right. Or I could say, you're not the only one. I'll tell you something in that moment. God did something in that congregation. And for the next 2 years, we saw walls fall everywhere. If I went back to visit today, there's a room in her house that my family can stay in. You know what? I don't know half of the power and the sweetness of forgiveness without some time in a cave. And I just wonder, have some of us forgotten that God can do that? Have some of us decided we'll hang on to the hurt, we'll hang on to the grudge, we'll hang on to it? Have some of us started turning our anger to the Lord? You could stop this if you wanted to. Have we forgotten that He may be doing something bigger in the dark than we can imagine? And is it time on this Sunday before Thanksgiving to step into the light together? I hope you don't need this message. I hope you don't. But if you do, there is an answer. And there's an answer for you right now. And I'm going to ask you, will you take just a moment and bow your head and close your eyes? Will you take just a moment